You never expect your own child to become a stranger until the night he looked me in the eyes, laughed with his wife, and poured his drink all over me like I was something beneath them. But what he didn't know was that the truth I'd been hiding would make that entire room freeze before anyone could even breathe. I always believed that a mother's heart can survive anything, loss, betrayal, disappointment, but I never imagined the deepest cut would come from the same hands I once held to teach how to walk. My son Daniel used to cling to my skirt, crying if I stepped even 1 foot out of his sight. Those memories echoed loudly in my mind the night everything changed. It was a celebration, my son's big promotion. His company hosted a luxurious evening party, all glitter and noise, filled with people dressed in fancy clothes, carrying sparkling drinks. I was excited, proud even. I bought a new dress, a simple navy blue gown that made me feel elegant. I wanted to show him I still fit into his world, even if I wasn't rich or polished like the people he worked with. But the moment I stepped inside the venue, I knew something was off. His wife, Clara, noticed me first. She gave me that smile, tight, sharp, the kind that never reaches the eyes. A smile that said she tolerated me only because society demanded it. Ever since they married, she'd been slowly pushing him away from me. First holidays, then family dinners, then simple phone calls. My son, who once visited every Sunday, began saying, "Clara's tired today," or "We already have plans." She wrapped him like a ribbon around her finger. Daniel approached me, but not with warmth, more like embarrassment. His shoulders stiffened, his smile forced. "Mom, you made it?" he said, but the tone was more surprise than joy. I tried to ignore the knot forming in my stomach. "Of course I did. Sweetheart, I'm proud of you." Clara slipped her hand around his arm, pressing her cheek to him. "Daniel, darling," introduce her quickly. "People are waiting for us." Her voice was sweet, but dripping in poison. Still, I forced myself to stay positive. After all, this was Daniel's night. I wouldn't let anything ruin it. We walked further into the hall, and Daniel grabbed 2 drinks from a waiter's tray, one for him, one for Clara. He didn't even look at me to ask if I wanted something. I let it slide. I'd gotten used to being invisible around her. As we moved through the crowd, Clara leaned to him and whispered something. Her lips curled in amusement. Daniel chuckled a shallow, uncomfortable laugh. Then he looked at me with an expression I couldn't read. Then came the moment. We reached a group of Daniel's colleagues. Clara stood tall, smiling like she owned the room. Daniel stood beside her, trying to match her energy. The music pulsed in the background, lights flickering softly. One of his coworkers asked, "Daniel, is this your mother?" His face tightened. Clara's grip on his arm strengthened. And then, in the span of one breath, Clara whispered something in his ear. Whatever she said flipped a switch inside him. Daniel stepped toward me, smiling coldly, the kind of smile people give before delivering an insult they think is funny. He raised his glass as if for a toast, and then he tilted his wrist, and the entire drink spilled over my dress, cold liquid running down my arms, soaking into the fabric. Gasps filled the room. A few hands flew to mouths. Daniel laughed. He actually laughed. "Oh, no, Mom," he said, voice deliberately loud. "You should be more careful. You bumped into me." Clara burst into giggles, covering her mouth like it was the joke of the year. Some coworkers forced awkward smiles. One man looked away, uncomfortable. I stood there freezing, literally and emotionally. The cold drink clung to my dress, dripping onto the floor. but the coldest thing in the room was my son's eyes. I stared at Daniel. You know I didn't bump into you. My voice was soft but steady. Clara scoffed. Oh, please, don't make a scene. This is embarrassing, as if I embarrassed them. Daniel didn't defend me. He didn't apologize. He didn't offer a napkin or help. He just stood there, letting everyone believe I was clumsy or, worse, pathetic. My heart cracked. My son, the boy I raised alone, who I sacrificed everything for, chose his wife's approval over my dignity. But I didn't cry. Not in that moment. Not in front of people who suddenly looked at me like I didn't belong. Instead, I stood straight, lifted my chin, and walked out of the ballroom. Behind me, I heard Clara laugh again. Drama queen. And Daniel didn't stop her. While walking out, the lights blurred through my tears, but I held them back because something inside me, something quiet and powerful, told me this wasn't the end. They humiliated me publicly. But they had no idea what was coming because the truth they never imagined, I knew, was about to turn their entire world upside down. Their little performance tonight, it lit the fuse. And I was done being silent. When I stepped outside the ballroom, the night air hit my skin like a slap, sharp, cold, and almost cleansing. The laughter and music from inside faded as the doors closed behind me, replaced by the quiet hum of distant traffic. I stood there for a moment, gathering myself, feeling the wet fabric cling to my body. The humiliation was still fresh, but something else began bubbling beneath it. Not anger, not sadness, clarity. The truth had been sitting silently in my hands for weeks, tucked away in a folder in my drawer, waiting for the moment it would be needed. And now, watching the way my own son laughed at my shame, I realized tonight was the moment everything snapped into place. They wanted to degrade me publicly. They wanted to show everyone I was small. But what they didn't know was that I wasn't powerless. Not anymore. I began walking toward my car, each step pulling strength back into my spine. Once inside, I sat with my hands on the steering wheel, breathing deeply. I replayed Daniel's face in my mind, the cold smirk, the way he let Clara control him, the way he didn't even hesitate to humiliate me. His father had been like that too. It wasn't an easy memory to revisit, but Clara's behavior, that manipulative sweetness covering something ugly, reminded me too much of the man I once loved and later survived. I fought for years to raise Daniel differently, to teach him kindness, empathy, strength. But somewhere along the way, Clara twisted him into something else, something unrecognizable. I wasn't going to lose my son completely. Not to her, not to her poison. So instead of going home, I drove straight to a quiet cafe across town, the one that stayed open until midnight. It was nearly empty when I walked in. The barista barely looked up from wiping the counter as I found a corner table and sat down. I needed a moment to gather my thoughts. I needed to remind myself why I hadn't revealed the truth earlier. Because the truth wasn't just about Clara. It was about Daniel too. I pulled out my phone, scrolling until I found the contact I needed. I hesitated for a second, but only a second. Then I pressed call. The line rang twice before a familiar voice answered. Hello? I said quietly. It's me. There was a pause on the other end. Then a voice full of warmth responded. You okay? You sound shaken. I let out a small breath. I think it's time. Another pause, heavier now. For what we talked about? Yes. My voice didn't tremble. Tonight he crossed a line. The voice softened with sympathy. I'm sorry. Truly. What happened? I looked down at my stained dress, the fabric stiffening as it dried. He humiliated me. In front of his colleagues, Clara put him up to it, and he listened. I knew she was influencing him, but the voice sighed. You did the right thing by calling. I'm not doing this to hurt him, I said quietly, staring out the window. I'm doing it because he deserves the truth, even if it destroys what he thinks is real. Then I'll prepare everything on my end, the voice said. When do you want to meet? Tomorrow morning. All right, I'll be ready. We hung up, and for a moment, I just sat in silence, letting everything settle. The humiliation had been painful, yes, but what Clara didn't understand was that pain has a way of forging resolve. And tonight, she had unknowingly given me the final push I needed. I wasn't unkind. I wasn't spiteful, but I was done watching someone tear apart the son I raised with my own hands. I drove home slowly, my mind quiet but alert, as if preparing for a storm. When I reached my driveway, I saw a car parked out front, a sleek silver sedan I recognized instantly, Daniel's. He was leaning against the hood, arms crossed, expression unreadable. The porch light illuminated him just enough for me to see the tension in his jaw. I stepped out of my car but didn't approach him. He walked toward me first. Mom, he said, his tone sharp. Why did you leave like that? You embarrassed Clara? I blinked, stunned for a moment. I embarrassed her. Yes, he insisted, running a hand through his hair. You made her uncomfortable. You know she doesn't like big scenes. A bitter laugh escaped my lips. I didn't make a scene, Daniel. You poured a drink on me. He shifted uncomfortably. It was an accident. Don't lie to me, I said softly but firmly. Not tonight. His eyes flickered, guilt, fear, denial, all swirling together. Clara just wants us to look good in front of people, he mumbled. She cares about our reputation. And I don't. That's not what Daniel. I cut in gently. Look at me. He did. For a moment, the mask slipped. I saw the little boy in him, the one who used to hug me so tightly whenever he scraped his knee. The boy who used to whisper, Mom, don't let go. But Clara had trained him well. The softness disappeared in seconds. Mom, he said stiffly, Clara thinks maybe you shouldn't come to events anymore. It's too stressful for you. There it was. The cut, the attempt to push me out quietly, to erase me politely. I nodded slowly. I see. He sighed, relieved that I wasn't arguing. Good. I think it's for the best. You know how she gets. I stepped closer, my voice calm and steady. Daniel, have you ever wondered why she gets the way she gets? He frowned. What do you mean? Have you ever asked yourself why she's so afraid of me? Why she needs to control you? Why she sees me as a threat? His eyes flashed defensively. She doesn't see you as a threat. She does, I said simply. Because she knows something you don't? He blinked. What? I smiled, not cruelly, not triumphantly, but with a quiet sadness. We'll talk tomorrow, I said. There's something you need to know. He looked confused, unsettled. Mom, what is it? Tomorrow, I repeated gently. It's time you learned the truth. I turned toward my house, leaving him standing in the driveway, unsure, restless, because tomorrow the truth would begin unraveling. And neither he nor Clara were ready for it. The morning sunlight crept slowly across my bedroom floor, warm and gentle, completely unaware of the storm waiting outside. I barely slept the night before. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Daniel's face, confused, defensive, lost. and Clara's smirk behind him like a shadow stretched too long. I woke up with a strange sense of peace. Not happiness, not relief, but clarity. Today, the truth would begin its work. I dressed simply, choosing clothes that made me feel steady. A soft sweater, comfortable slacks. Nothing fancy. I wasn't preparing for a fight. I was preparing for liberation. At 9:45 a.m., I grabbed the folder from my drawer, the one I had kept hidden for months, the one containing the truth Clara prayed Daniel would never learn, the one that would crack the image she built around herself. I slipped it into my bag and drove. The meeting place was a calm, modest office space on the edge of town, the kind of place without loud signs or bustling crowds, a place where serious conversations happened behind closed doors. When I walked inside, he was already there, sitting at a table with 2 cups of tea. His presence immediately brought warmth into the room. He stood when he saw me, giving a gentle smile. "Good morning," he said. "Morning," I replied, taking a seat. "You look steady," he observed. "I feel steady," I said softly. "Last night pushed me to the edge, but sometimes that's the only way to see what's on the other side." He nodded. "So, you're ready?" I placed my hand on my bag. "More than ready." We talked for a few minutes about the plan, about how Daniel might react, about keeping things calm. He wasn't just someone who knew the truth. He was someone who had helped uncover it. Someone who had watched Clara's facade crumble slowly over time. "You know," he said gently, "when this is over, he may look at you differently." "Maybe," I whispered, "but at least he'll be looking at me with his eyes open." Right on time, the door opened. Daniel walked in. His expression was a mix of tension and confusion, like he wasn't sure whether he came for answers or a confrontation. He nodded stiffly at me, then looked at the man across from us. His brows furrowed. "What is he doing here?" I answered calmly. "He's here because he knows the truth, and because you need to hear it from both of us." Daniel folded his arms. "Mom, I don't understand why you're making this so dramatic. Clara thinks." "This isn't about what Clara thinks," I interrupted gently. "This is about what you deserve to know." He sat slowly, but his jaw was tight. "Fine, tell me." I looked at him with the same calm I felt inside. "Daniel," I began softly, "do you remember when your company ran the background checks for spouse-related security clearance? The one Clara insisted she didn't need to be part of?" He frowned. "Yes." She said it was unnecessary, that it was invasive. "It wasn't invasive," I said, but was standard. But she refused. "Do you know why?" He exhaled impatiently. "Mom, she hates paperwork. This isn't about paperwork," I said. "It's about what the paperwork would have revealed." He stared at me now, really listening. I slid the folder from my bag and placed it on the table. Daniel looked between us. "What is that?" I kept my voice gentle. "Proof. About Clara. About her past. About why she's so desperate to control you and to push me away." His eyes hardened. "No, Mom. She told me already. She said you were digging into her personal life and trying to break us apart." A quiet sadness filled my chest. "Of course she said that. People like Clara always hide behind accusations before the truth reaches the light." "Daniel," I whispered, "I didn't dig anything. I didn't have to. The truth came to me." He shook his head, preparing arguments in his mind. "Mom, please, just stop this." I opened the folder, and the world shifted. Daniel stared at the first document, a printed report. His brows creased, trying to understand. Then he read the header. His eyes widened. What is this? The man beside me spoke calmly. It's Clara's financial dependency record from before she met you. Daniel blinked. Her what? Her file, the man said, showing she was financially supported by someone for reasons she didn't disclose to you. Daniel shook his head. No, she told me she worked while studying. She didn't, I said softly. She lived off someone else's money, someone she didn't want you to know about. His heartbeat was almost visible in his throat. He flipped to the next document. His jaw dropped. What is this, a restraining order? Yes, I said gently. Filed against Clara, not by her. She wasn't honest about it, Daniel. His face drained of color. But she told me that. She lied, I said softly, to protect her image, to make herself look like a victim. She didn't want you to know she was capable of manipulation, of controlling people, of pushing others into isolation. He swallowed hard. Then he kept reading. The documents were brutal in their honesty. Past relationships she destroyed. Friendships she severed. People she manipulated. And it all built a picture Daniel never imagined he'd have to confront. Minutes passed. Silence wrapped around us like a heavy blanket. Finally, Daniel looked up at me. His voice was barely a whisper. Mom, why didn't you tell me sooner? My heart cracked. Because, I said gently, I didn't want to break your marriage. I thought she would grow, or change, or maybe you would see it on your own. He shut his eyes tight, breathing shakily. And last night, he whispered, when I poured that drink, you knew all of this, but you still didn't say anything. I didn't want to expose her to the world. I said quietly. I wanted her to expose herself to you. He covered his face with both hands, shame dripping off him. Then, in a voice so small it hurt to hear, he asked, Mom, what do I do now? And that was the moment he finally saw me again. Not as someone Clara wanted him to believe I was, but as his mother. Daniel sat there with his face buried in his hands, shoulders shaking, not from crying, but from the weight of shame impressing down on him. I could almost see the moment his entire world began to tilt, the way truth does when it cracks clean through a person's beliefs. He finally lifted his head, eyes red not from tears, but from the harsh sting of realization. Mom, I let her turn me against you. His voice was quiet, rough, almost strangled. I took a slow breath. Daniel, I don't need an apology. I need you to see clearly. He nodded, a broken movement. I thought, God, I thought she loved me. I thought she needed me. And when she said you were interfering, I believed her. Of course you did. I murmured gently. That's what people like her do. They isolate. They control. They manipulate. And they make the people around them believe they're the problem. He rubbed his forehead like the truth itself was painful. Mom, the way I treated you last night, that was Clara, I said. Not you? But he shook his head. No, I made the choice. I listened to her. I did what she wanted. His voice trembled again. I humiliated you. For a moment, the room fell into a deep, heavy silence. Then he whispered something I wasn't prepared for. I don't even recognize who I've become. The man beside me finally spoke, his tone calm and steady. That's because you've been carrying someone else's script. When you stop reading their lines, you find your own voice again. Daniel stared blankly at the folder before him, as if the papers themselves were alive and breathing. Mom, some of these reports, these complaints, these warnings, how did she hide all this from me? Easily, I said softly. You trusted her completely. And I didn't trust you at all. he whispered. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. The truth was already carving its way through him. A moment later, his phone buzzed on the table. He didn't want to look, but he did. And when he saw the message, his entire face drained of color. What is it? I asked quietly. He turned the screen toward me. It was Clara. And the message read, "Where are you? You'd better handle your mother before she ruins everything." Daniel's throat tightened. She doesn't even know I'm here, he said softly. She thinks she still controls everything. I could see something shift inside him, something small at first, then growing, strengthening. But she doesn't, he whispered. Not anymore. He stood abruptly. I need to talk to her. I reached out, placing a gentle hand on his arm. Daniel. Not with anger, not with guilt. Go with clarity. His eyes softened. I'm done being her puppet. We left the office together, stepping into the cool morning air. Daniel walked ahead, his steps quick, tense, determined. I followed behind him slowly, giving him room, giving him breath, giving him everything a mother should when her child is learning to stand on his own again. When we reached the parking lot, he paused. Mom, he said quietly without turning around, will you come with me? My heart squeezed. Of course. I whispered, you won't face her alone. We got into our separate cars and drove in silence toward Daniel and Clara's house. The closer we got, the more I could feel his anxiety radiating through the air, even from inside my own vehicle. When he parked in the driveway, he sat for a moment with his hands gripping the steering wheel. I approached slowly. You okay? I asked gently. He exhaled a shaky breath. I don't know what she'll do. Tell the truth, I said. The truth will be your anchor. He nodded and walked toward the front door. Before he could open it, it swung wide. There stood Clara. Her eyes were sharp, glittering with cold anger. Her lips curled into a smirk when she saw me. Well, she said, folding her arms, the queen returns. Daniel straightened, his voice steady. Clara, we need to talk. She ignored him entirely. Her glare stayed locked on me. Did you run to him with your little dramatics? Did you show him your fake sadness? Did you twist stories to turn him against me? I blinked. I didn't twist anything. She laughed harshly. Of course you did. You always play helpless. You've always needed him to prove you're still relevant. Daniel stiffened. Clara, stop. She didn't. In fact, she stepped closer, raising her chin defiantly. You're pathetic, she hissed at me. You can't stand that he has a life without you. So you go digging into things that are none of your business. That's enough. Daniel snapped. Clara turned to him, eyes flashing in disbelief. You're defending her. After everything I told you about her. She didn't lie to me, Daniel said calmly. You did. For a second, Clara froze, like her brain needed more time to process the unexpected. Then her expression twisted. Daniel, she's manipulating you? She insisted. She's jealous. She hates me. No, Daniel said quietly. She doesn't hate you. He stepped closer, his voice low and steady. But she knows the truth about you. Clara blinked rapidly. What truth? He held up the folder. Silence. A silence so deep you could hear the faint hum of electricity in the walls. Clara's face drained of color. Her eyes darted between the folder and my face and Daniel's. Daniel, she whispered, voice trembling now. Where did you, who gave you? It doesn't matter, he said. What matters is that I know. And now we're going to talk about everything you hid from me. She shook her head violently. No, Daniel, you can't believe. I can. he said. And I do. Clara's breathing became fast, shallow, frantic, and then her gaze snapped to me, full of pure, burning hatred. You, she spat. You did this. For the first time in a long time, I met her stare without fear. No, I said softly. You did this. I just refused to stay blind. And in that moment, her entire world began to collapse. Clara stood frozen in the doorway, her eyes darting rapidly, like a cornered animal looking for an escape route that didn't exist. Her breathing quickened, her fingers twitching at her sides. She wasn't in control anymore, and she knew it. For people like her, losing control wasn't just frightening, it was unbearable. Daniel stepped inside first, his movements calm but purposeful. I followed slowly, closing the door behind me. Clara backed away as if the truth itself were chasing her. Daniel, she whispered, her voice trembling. Please, let's talk alone. He shook his head. No more secrets, no more closed doors. Not today. Her face crumpled in disbelief. You're choosing her over your wife. I'm choosing honesty, he said quietly. Something we've been missing for a long time. Clara swallowed hard. For a moment, she seemed like she might cry, but then her expression hardened again, panic transforming into aggression. What exactly do you think you know? She snapped. What lies did she feed you? Daniel didn't flinch. He placed the folder on the dining table, tapping it with 2 fingers. These aren't lies, Clara, he said. They're records, reports, legal documents. Clara's eyes flickered to the papers, and her entire posture stiffened. She didn't move toward them. She stayed rooted to the spot, as if touching them would burn her. You went through my private life, she hissed. You violated my privacy. Daniel raised his eyebrows. You mean the parts of your life you intentionally hid from me? You didn't need to know every detail. He stepped closer. You hid restraining orders, financial dependency, emotional abuse allegations. Clara, these aren't tiny details. These are things that shape who you are. Clara's voice rose. I am your wife! My past does not define me. Then why hide it? He asked gently. Her mouth opened, then closed. She had no answer. But that never stopped Clara before. She crossed her arms, lifting her chin defiantly. I hid it because I knew how you would react. People judge. People assume the worst. People fear the truth when it reflects who they still are. I said quietly. She whipped her head toward me. Stay out of this. No, Daniel said sharply. She's part of this. She's the one you tried to push out of my life. Clara laughed bitterly. Oh, of course I did. She never approved of me? I didn't know you, I said gently. I wanted to, but you never let me? Clara scoffed. Why would I? You hovered over him like he was still a child. You made him dependent on you. You wanted to control him. No, I whispered. I wanted to love him. You wanted to own him. Clara's nostrils flared. You don't get to play saint here. Daniel took the folder and pulled out a specific paper, a document with several highlighted lines. He held it up. Clara, do you want to explain this? Her eyes flicked to it, and for a moment, pure terror flashed across her face. I recognized it instantly. The psychological evaluation, the one she hoped would never see daylight, the one that described patterns of manipulation, emotional instability, and coercive behavior. Clara's voice dropped to a whisper. You weren't supposed to see that. Why not? Daniel asked softly. Because. She swallowed hard. Because you'd think I was broken. He stared at her for a long moment. And are you? Her eyes filled with sudden tears, not soft, not innocent, but heavy with fear. Daniel, She whispered, stepping closer. I've been scared. Every day. Scared you'd leave me. Scared you'd stop loving me. Scared shit. Clara pointed at me with trembling fingers. Would replace me in your life. I was terrified. So I did what I had to do. By isolating me from my mother, he asked. Clara's face twisted. You don't understand. She made you soft. She made you doubt us. I needed to protect what we have. Daniel nodded slowly. So you protected our marriage by humiliating my mother at a party. Clara's breath hitched. That wasn't supposed to hurt her. It was supposed to show that you trust me, that you choose me. He shook his head. Clara, that wasn't love. That was control. Her tears finally fell. She sank into a chair, burying her face in her hands. Her shoulders shook, not from guilt, but from fear. She wasn't crying for me. She wasn't crying for Daniel. She was crying for herself. I didn't want to lose you, she whispered. Daniel softened, not in forgiveness, but in understanding. Clara, you were never going to lose me, but you were losing yourself. And now you're losing the illusion. That's what hurts. Clara looked up, eyes wide. So what now? Are you leaving me? He didn't answer immediately, and that silence told her everything. She panicked, leaning forward, reaching for his hand. Daniel, please, don't make a decision yet. I can explain everything. I can fix everything. He pulled his hand away slowly. You can't fix something if you won't admit it's broken. She flinched as if he'd struck her. Then she turned to me, hatred twisting her features again. You did this? You poisoned him. I shook my head. No, the truth did. She stood so suddenly, the chair scraped across the floor. Fine. If you want the truth so badly, then I'll give it to you. Daniel's eyes narrowed. Clara, you think you know everything. She snarled. You don't know a thing. You don't know what I've sacrificed, what I've hidden, what I've done for us. Her voice cracked, anger and fear warring in her expression. Daniel stepped closer, but his tone stayed calm. Then tell me everything. Clara stared at him, chest rising and falling rapidly, eyes wild with something dark and desperate. And finally she whispered, you want to know the truth? Fine. But once you hear it, you'll never look at me the same way again. A chill went through the room because the way she said, it wasn't dramatic, it was real. Whatever she was about to confess was far worse than anything in that folder. Clara stood in the center of the room like a storm trapped inside a fragile body, eyes wild, breathing shallow, fingers trembling as if the truth she was about to reveal was burning her from the inside. Daniel stiffened, bracing himself. I stayed silent, steady, watching Clara unravel thread by thread. She swallowed hard, then whispered, you think I pushed you away from your mother because I'm insecure? Because I'm jealous? That's only half the story. Daniel frowned. Then what's the other half? Clara let out a hollow laugh. The part neither of you knew. The part I've been hiding since before we even got married. She stepped toward Daniel, her voice dropping to something raw, something almost haunting. When you met me, I wasn't in love with you yet. I was desperate. Daniel blinked. Desperate for what? For protection. The word hung in the air like a blade. Clara looked down at her hands, twisting her wedding ring nervously. I told you my ex was controlling, she said. But I didn't tell you everything. I didn't tell you he wasn't just controlling, he was dangerous. Daniel exchanged a quick look with me, trying to piece the puzzle together. Clara continued, her voice barely holding steady. He didn't just manipulate me. He stalked me, tracked me, followed me, took my money, threatened anyone who came near me. Daniel's breath caught. Why didn't you tell me? She shook her head helplessly. Because he told me if I ever exposed him, he'd come after the person I trusted most. Her eyes lifted slowly, and she looked straight at Daniel. You. A quiet, heavy silence swallowed the room. I ran from him, she whispered. I hid. I changed jobs. I changed numbers. But he always found me. Always showed up again. Her voice cracked as old terror surfaced. And the last time he appeared, he said he didn't care if he killed me anymore. That if I ever loved someone else, he'd make sure we died together. Daniel's face paled, shock rippling across his features. Why didn't you tell me this before we married? Because, Clara whispered, the only way he would leave me alone was if I disappeared completely. Her eyes filled with tears, not manipulative ones this time, but the kind born from memories soaked in fear. So I chose you, she said, because you were stable, safe, kind, someone he wouldn't see coming, someone who couldn't shield me. Daniel stepped back, stunned. You used me to hide. Yes, she said without hesitation. I married you to escape him. The words slammed into the room like a door being kicked open. Daniel staggered slightly, struggling to breathe. So everything, the control, the arguments, the way you isolated me from friends, from my mom, that was all fear. Clara wiped her cheek. Part fear, part survival, and part, she bit her lip, part not knowing how to stop controlling once I started. The confession was brutal but honest. Daniel squeezed his eyes shut. Clara, we could have dealt with this together. You didn't have to lie. You didn't have to hide everything. Clara shook her head. You don't understand. I didn't just hide from him. I hid from who I used to be. Her voice wavered, revealing the pieces she tried so hard to bury. Before you, I was broken, manipulative, angry. I hurt people because that was the only way I knew how to survive. I didn't want you to see that version of me, so I pretended. I built a perfect image. I made you depend on me so you wouldn't see the cracks. Daniel whispered, but you pushed me away from everyone else. Yes, she admitted. Because the fewer people in your life, the fewer threats in mine. Her eyes darted toward me again, filled with something painfully vulnerable. And your mother, she was the biggest threat. Not because she did anything wrong, not because she hated me, but because he once told me, the person you love most becomes the easiest target. I felt a cold shiver travel through my spine. Daniel's voice dropped, trembling. Clara, did you think he'd hurt my mother? Clara's breathing quickened. I didn't know. I didn't know anything anymore. I was always waiting for him to show up again. Every shadow, every unfamiliar car, every unknown number. I lived in constant fear. Tears streamed down her face freely now. So when your mother tried to get closer, I panicked. I pushed her away. I convinced you she was the problem because I didn't want to tell you the real problem was following me like a ghost. The room trembled with the weight of her truth. Daniel sank into a chair, overwhelmed. Clara, why didn't you tell me this last night? Or last month? Or before we married? She knelt in front of him, her hands shaking as she reached for his. Because last night, when I made you humiliate her, he was there. My heart stopped. Daniel's head snapped up. What? Clara's voice cracked into a whisper. I saw him, across the room, watching me, smiling, like he still owned me, like he knew I could never escape. She sobbed into her hands. I panicked. I didn't know what to do. So I made you embarrass her because I needed to prove to him that I wasn't weak anymore, that I wasn't the scared girl he used to control. Daniel's voice trembled. Clara, this is serious. Why didn't you tell me immediately? She looked up, eyes swollen. Because I didn't want him to go after you. Or her. A long, chilling silence filled the house. Daniel turned toward me slowly, his expression shifting from shock due to fear. Mom, he whispered. If he was watching her, does that mean he knows who she is? Clara nodded slowly, shaking. I'm afraid he knows everything. And in that moment, the humiliation at the party became the least important part of the story, because the real threat had just entered their lives. For several long seconds, no one spoke. The house fell into a dense, heavy silence, so thick it felt like the air itself was holding its breath. Daniel's eyes shifted between Clara and me, his mind trying to understand how the night's humiliation had suddenly transformed into something far darker, far more dangerous. Finally, he whispered, Clara, if he was at the party, if he saw Mom, then what does he want now? Clara shook her head slowly, her eyes hollow with dread. I don't know. But when he looked at me, it felt like he was reminding me that running from him was never really running away, just delaying the moment he'd step back into my life. Daniel ran a trembling hand through his hair. This is insane. We need to call the police. Now, Clara let out a humorless, broken laugh. Daniel, I tried that before. They couldn't prove anything. He always knew how to disappear before things escalated. He leaves no trace. No threats in writing. Nothing physical. Just fear. That's his weapon. Her voice cracked. He destroys you from the inside out. I stepped closer, gently placing a hand on Daniel's shoulder. Your mother has one question, Daniel, and you need to answer it honestly. He looked at me, eyes full of swirling worry. What question? Do you feel safe in your own home right now? The silence that followed was answer enough. His throat bobbed as he swallowed. I don't know anymore. Clara sank onto the couch, hugging her knees. You shouldn't feel unsafe because of me, she whispered. That's why I didn't tell you. That's why I tried to handle everything alone. Daniel turned sharply. Handling it alone nearly broke us, Clara. It nearly destroyed my relationship with my mother. It pushed me into a version of myself I don't even recognize. She flinched at his tone, tears falling again. I know. She whispered. I know I made everything worse. I didn't know how to stop it. Daniel exhaled slowly, long enough to steady himself before he spoke again. Clara, I need you to tell me exactly what happened. Every detail. Every time he came back. Everything you saw last night. She hesitated, her fingers twisting a loose thread on the cushion. It didn't start last night, she murmured. It started months ago. Daniel froze. Months? Clara nodded weakly. The first time I saw him again was outside our building. He was leaning against a car watching, not approaching, not talking, just watching. Like he was studying my life. A shiver ran through my spine. Why didn't you tell me? Daniel asked again, softer this time. Because I thought it was a hallucination at first, she whispered. I thought stress was tricking me. But then I saw him again, at a cafe, at the grocery store. Once even across the street from your office. Daniel's jaw tightened. He followed me. Clara's voice trembled. I followed everything around me. Then she looked directly at me. And the reason he fixated on you is because you're the only thing in Daniel's life I couldn't control. The words hit me like cold water. I stared at her, stunned, not angry, but struck by a deep, sad realization. Clara hadn't hated me because I did something wrong. She hated me because someone else had trained her to fear closeness, to fear dependency, to fear love unless it came with control. Daniel sat beside her, though still stiff, still guarded. Clara, what happened at the party? Tell me exactly. She wiped her eyes with shaking hands. I saw him near the back entrance. He was dressed formally, blending in like any guest. But the moment our eyes met, he smirked. That same smirk he used every time he wanted to remind me he was in charge. Her breath caught, her voice collapsing into a whisper. I panicked. I felt like I was back in his apartment, hiding bruises under makeup, lying to my family, obeying rules he made up to test me. Daniel's fists clenched. And instead of telling me, "You told me to humiliate my mother," she winced. I wasn't thinking. When I saw her there smiling, proud of you, I thought if he sees me controlling someone, then he'll see I'm not the weak girl he used to break. A deep ache filled the room. You thought showing him your power would protect you? I asked softly. Her voice broke. I thought showing him you didn't need her would make him leave me alone. Daniel leaned back, stunned. So you weaponized my mother to make yourself look strong. Clara covered her face. Yes, and I hate myself for it. But fear makes you do things you'd never imagine. There was a long moment where no one moved. Then Daniel whispered, Clara, is he going to come back? Clara shook her head slowly. He already did. Daniel's face went pale. When? She looked at both of us. Last night, after the party. When you were parking the car, he walked right past me. Close enough that I felt his sleeve brush my arm. Daniel inhaled sharply. And you didn't tell me? She choked on her own breath. He leaned in and said, I see the family you built. Let's see how long before it breaks. Then he walked away. My heart thudded painfully in my chest. Daniel stood abruptly, pacing the room, running a hand through his hair again. We need to call someone, police, security, something. They won't find him, Clara whispered. He never leaves a trail. Daniel stopped suddenly, turning toward me. Mom, he said in a voice threaded with fear, I need you to stay with me tonight. Please. Clara nodded in agreement. He saw her. He noticed her. That makes her vulnerable. But I shook my head slowly. No, I said quietly. I'm not the vulnerable one. They both looked at me, confused. Then I continued, I'm the one he doesn't understand. And that makes me the only person he can't predict. A chill settled into the room because in that moment, Daniel and Clara both realized something neither had considered. This wasn't just Clara's past coming back. It was becoming all of our present. The weight of my last sentence seemed to press into the walls, making the entire room feel smaller, tighter, as if the truth itself had finally taken a seat beside us. Daniel stared at me, his expression a whirlwind, fear, confusion, and something else, respect. Clara looked equally shaken, her eyes wide as she tried to understand what I meant. Daniel finally broke the silence. Mom, what do you mean you're the only one he can't predict? I exhaled slowly, not dramatically, but with the heaviness of someone who has carried more truth than they ever intended to. Because, I said softly, I've met men like him before. Clara jerked her head up. You have? I nodded. Your ex isn't the first man who survived by making others afraid. Men like him expect weakness. They look for people who shrink, who tremble, who doubt themselves. They thrive on chaos, secrecy, emotional control. But the one thing they can't handle is someone who sees them clearly. Clara swallowed hard. What do you mean? I continued, that men like him don't know how to manipulate someone who refuses to be intimidated. Daniel stared at me, Mom, are you saying you're not afraid of him? I paused for a moment, not to pretend strength, but to gather the truth in a way he could accept. I'm cautious, I said. But fear is something I learned to walk through a long time ago, before you were born. Clara frowned. Why? What happened? Daniel shot her a warning look, but I lifted a hand gently, signaling it was okay. My past may not be exactly like yours, I told Clara, but I understand the pattern. I was married to someone who believed he owned the air I breathed. A man whose anger filled a room before he even opened his mouth. Daniel's breath caught. Dad, I nodded once. You remember very little about him. You were young, I continued. But before he left us, he tried to break me, not with fists, with control, with fear, with words that chipped away at who I was. Clara's eyes softened, not in pity, but in recognition. Pain recognizes pain. I survived him, I said. Not because I was strong, but because I refused to stay small. Daniel sat down slowly, absorbing every word. That's why you're calm, Clara whispered. That's why you didn't panic when I told you he saw you. Yes, I replied. Because his kind only wins when you run, when you shrink, when you play the role they write for you. Daniel rubbed his forehead. So what do we do now? We stop reacting with fear, I said, and we start acting with strategy. Clara looked at me helplessly. But how? He shows up whenever he wants. He disappears. He plays mind games. You can't fight someone like that. You're right, I said. You don't fight him where he is strong. You fight him where he is weak. Daniel frowned. Where is he weak? His ego. I replied. Men like him crumble when they realize they're not in control anymore. Clara hugged her knees tighter. I don't feel strong enough for this. That's okay, I said gently. You don't have to be. Strength isn't loud. Sometimes strength is simply telling the truth out loud, even when you're shaking. Her lower lip trembled. He ruined my life once. I don't want him to ruin it again. No, I said firmly. Not if we stay united. Daniel finally spoke again, voice steady but afraid. Mum, what do we do first? I turned to Clara. You said he brushed past you last night. She nodded nervously. Yes. And he spoke to you. Word for word? Yes, I said. What did he say? She repeated it quietly. He said, I see the family you built. Let's see how long before it breaks. I breathed in deeply. Then he's not watching you. He's threatening your stability. He wants power again. He wants to make you collapse so he can feel strong. Daniel clenched his fists. I swear if he comes near her. Hey, Will, I interrupted softly, but not violently, not at first. His kind prefers psychological warfare, intimidation, confusion. Clara shivered. That's exactly how he used to control me. Yes, I said, but now he has a new goal. Daniel's eyes sharpened. Which is? To make you doubt Clara and Clara doubt herself. Clara looked horrified. So this is my fault. No, I said firmly. This is who he is. He destroys anything he cannot control. Daniel paced the room. We need a plan. I already have one, I said. They both turned to me. First, I said, you two are not staying here tonight. He knows this address. He knows your routine. We break the pattern. Daniel blinked. Where do we go? My house, I said. It's less predictable. And more importantly, he doesn't know the layout or habits there. Clara hesitated. Are you sure? I nodded. You're safe with me. Daniel exhaled shakily. What next? Tomorrow morning, I said, we gather everything Clara has, every message, every time she saw him. dates, locations. We build a timeline. Clara frowned. For the police. For someone better, I said. Daniel's eyes widened. Who? I gave a small, knowing smile. Someone who doesn't get intimidated by men who hide in shadows. Before they could ask more, I continued. And lastly, you two need to stay together tonight. No splitting up. He will try to isolate Clara again. He always does. Clara nodded weakly. Okay. Daniel looked at me with a breath of hope. Mom, do you think we can get ahead of him? Yes, I said. Not because he's weak, but because he's predictable. A small flicker of relief passed through Clara's eyes. But that flicker faded when Daniel's phone buzzed. He picked it up slowly, his face drained of color. What is it? I asked. He turned the screen toward me. A message. From an unknown number. Nice family meeting. See you soon. Clara gasped. Daniel tightened his grip until the phone trembled. And I didn't flinch, because now I understood the game. And I was ready to play. Daniel's hands trembled as he held the phone, the glow of the screen, reflecting the fear rising in his eyes. Clara's breath hitched, her fingers instantly curling around her knees, as if trying to make herself smaller. But I didn't move. I didn't gasp. I didn't panic. I didn't even raise my eyebrows, because this message didn't frighten me. It confirmed everything. Daniel looked at me helplessly. Mom, he knows where we are. He's probably watching. How is he doing this? Clara whispered. He always knows. He always finds a way. I took a step forward and gently placed a hand over Daniel's. Listen to me, I said quietly. He didn't send that message because he's powerful. He sent it because he's scared. Clara stared at me like I'd lost my mind. Scared? Of what? Of truth, I said. Of exposure, of losing control. And right now he sees Clara breaking free from him. He sees Daniel seeing her clearly. He sees me standing beside both of you. That scares him more than anything. Daniel exhaled shakily. But if he knows we're together, doesn't that make us a target? Yes, I said. But it also means he's running out of moves. Clara hugged herself, rocking slightly. He won't stop. You don't understand. He doesn't stop until he wins. Until you're terrified enough to obey him. I walked toward her slowly and sat beside her. Clara, I said softly, I understand more than you think. She swallowed, eyes glistening. How? How could anyone understand what it's like to live under that kind of fear? I took her hand, not as a rival, not as a mother-in-law she once despised, but as a woman who had walked through hell before. Because I survived a man just like him, I said. And the day he realized I wasn't afraid anymore, that was the day he lost. Clara blinked at me, tears spilling slowly. I don't know how to stop being afraid. You don't have to stop, I whispered. You just have to stop letting the fear guide you. Daniel watched us both, his chest rising and falling unevenly. We need to leave. Now? Yes. I agreed. Pack essentials only. We'll go to my house. It's safer. Clara rose slowly, still trembling. What if he's watching the house? What if he follows us? That's exactly what he wants you to think, I said. Fear makes people predictable. Tonight, you two will not be predictable. Daniel nodded. We'll leave through the back. I'll check the yard. He walked toward the kitchen, determination pushing through his fear. Clara hesitated, touching my arm lightly. Why are you helping me after everything I did to you? I smiled, not proudly, not smugly, but gently. Because fear made you cruel, I said. But truth can make you human again. She looked away ashamed. I'm sorry for how I treated you. I know, I said. And you'll say it properly one day. But right now, the priority is keeping you safe. She nodded and hurried to their bedroom to pack. While they gathered their things, I went to the front window and peered out through a narrow gap in the curtain. Nothing. No shadow. No figure. No movement. But predators like him didn't lurk in the open. They lurked in the mind. Daniel returned first, a small bag over his shoulder. Backyard looks clear. Good, I said. Clara? She emerged moments later, clutching a duffel bag and her phone, eyes darting nervously. We won't take your car, I said. He'll expect that. You two ride with me. Clara froze. But my car will be sitting here. He'll know we left. That's fine, I replied. He'll waste time looking for you in the wrong direction. We stepped toward the back door when Daniel's phone buzzed again. He flinched. Clara gasped. I held up my hand. Let me see it. Daniel handed me the phone, his fingers trembling slightly. Another unknown message. Running won't help. She knows that. Clara's knees buckled slightly. His talking about me. He always talks in riddles. He wants me scared. I stared at the message, studying its rhythm. No, I said. He wants you cornered. There's a difference. Daniel's voice steadied. Mum, what do we do? I looked at both of them. We leave, I said. Now, we moved quickly out the back door, down the side of the house, and toward my car parked along the street. I unlocked it with a soft beep, ushered them in quietly, scanning the area one last time. Still nothing. When I slid behind the wheel and started the engine, Clara's voice trembled beside me. Do you think he's watching right now? I didn't look at her. Instead, I began driving. If he is, I said calmly, he'll learn something tonight. Fear doesn't work on everyone. The drive to my house was tense, silent except for the sound of our breathing and the hum of the engine. Daniel checked the rearview mirror every few seconds. Clara clutched her seatbelt so tightly her knuckles were white, but no car followed. No one appeared in the shadows. No message came through. And that was the point. Fear didn't need footsteps. Fear only needed imagination. When we finally pulled into my driveway, Clara let out a shaky breath. Daniel stepped out first, scanning the area like a soldier returning from battle. Inside, I locked the door with a click that sounded heavier than usual. Clara collapsed onto the couch, burying her face in her hands. I hate this. I hate that he still controls everything, even from a distance. I knelt beside her. Only controls what you give him, I said gently. Tonight, you gave him fear. Tomorrow, you will give him nothing. Daniel paced the room. Mom, who were you talking about earlier? You said we weren't going to the police. You said we were going to someone better. I nodded slowly. The moment was finally here. Yes, I said. Someone who specializes in cases like Clara's. Someone who doesn't get intimidated. Someone who knows exactly how men like him operate. Clara looked up, eyes full of desperate hope. Who is it? I stood and picked up my phone. A woman I met years ago, I said. She helped me when your father tried to control me. She's direct. She's relentless. And she doesn't tolerate cowards who hide behind intimidation. Daniel swallowed. What's her name? I looked at both of them with calm resolve. Detective Marlene Hale? Clara's eyes widened. A detective? One of the best? I said. Daniel let out a breath of relief. You think she can help us? I know she can, I said, because she helped me, and she knows exactly how to stop a ghost who thinks he can keep haunting your life. Clara closed her eyes, whispering, "Will she protect us?" "No," I said, voice steady. They stared at me. "She will hunt him?" And for the first time since the chaos began, Clara didn't look terrified. She looked hopeful. Detective Marlene Hale arrived faster than either Daniel or Clara expected. But I wasn't surprised. When a woman like her hears the words controlled, threatened, and we're not safe, she doesn't waste time. She moves. The front doorbell rang sharply, not timidly, not cautiously, but with purpose. Clara flinched. Daniel tensed. I walked to the door and opened it. And there she was, Marlene Hale. Tall, broad-shouldered, silver streaks in her tightly pulled back hair. Eyes sharp enough to slice through a lie before it left your mouth. She stepped inside without waiting for an invitation, because she didn't need one. "Margaret," she said, giving me a curt nod. "It's been a long time." "Too long," I replied. "Thank you for coming." She glanced at Daniel and Clara, assessing them with a single glance the way only trained eyes can. She wasn't judging. She was calculating. "You two look like hell," she said flatly. "Sit. We don't have time for dramatics." Clara obeyed immediately, folding into the couch like a frightened child. Daniel stood behind her, one hand on her shoulder. Marlene dropped a thick folder onto my coffee table, the sound heavy, final, like the beginning of war. She pulled out a notepad. "Tell me everything," she said. "Start from the moment the threats began." Clara looked at me, terrified. I gave her a reassuring nod. "You're safe," I whispered. "Talk." Clara swallowed hard and began. Her voice trembled as she described the party, the spilled drink, the humiliation, the emotional manipulation, the anger that followed her home. Then she explained the messages, the fear, the stalking, the ex-lover who had slithered back into her life like a poisonous snake. She spoke for nearly 15 minutes. Marlene didn't blink once. When Clara finally stopped, Marlene nodded slowly. "Good," she said. "You're not crazy." Clara's lips parted. "I'm not?" "No," Marlene said. "You're dealing with a textbook psychological aggressor. The kind who isolates, confuses, humiliates, and destabilizes their target before making a move. And based on what you described, he's accelerating." Daniel stiffened. "Accelerating toward what?" "Toward whatever gives him the most control," Marlene replied. "He doesn't care if that control comes from fear, obedience, or destruction. Men like him just need power. Over her, over you, over your lives." Clara's hands shook violently. "So what do we do?" Marlene flipped open her folder. "We'll build a case, a solid one." She slid a document toward Clara. "First step, a formal statement. Everything you told me, written in detail." Clara stared at the paper like it might burn her fingers. "He'll kill me if he finds out." "No," Marlene said firmly. "He won't, because everything you do next will be under protection. But I can't protect shadows. I need something on record." Daniel stepped forward. "I'll sign 1, 2. Marlene raised an eyebrow. "Even better. The more witnesses, the stronger the case becomes." She pulled out another sheet. "But before any paperwork, I need to ask something important." Daniel and Clara exchanged a nervous glance. Marlene leaned forward. "Has he ever gotten physical?" Clara froze. Daniel clenched his jaw. "Not recently." Marlene narrowed her eyes. "And before recently?" Clara looked down, ashamed. "He shoved me once, pushed me against the counter. But I didn't fall. I could convince myself it wasn't a big deal." Marlene made a single note. Clara's voice cracked. "And he grabbed my wrist so hard last year that I had bruises, but I covered them. Another note, and sometimes when he's angry, he stands too close to mean anything but intimidation. Marlene closed the notebook. That's enough, she said. Enough for a protective order. Enough for surveillance. Enough for tracking warrants. You've given me more than you realize. Clara's eyes widened. I thought, because I stayed, because I didn't report it, abuse doesn't expire. Marlene said, fear doesn't erase evidence, and your silence doesn't absolve him. You survived. That's the only part that matters. Daniel wrapped his arm around Clara, pulling her close. Marlene turned to him. You said he sent messages. Still have them? Yes, he said quickly, pulling out his phone and handing it over. Marlene studied the screen. He uses burner apps. Anonymous routing. Coward tactics. I've dealt with this type before. She took a deep breath. And I've put men like him in prison. Clara gasped softly. Daniel exhaled shakily. What's the next step? Marlene stood, the air shifting with her authority. Next step, I speak to him. Clara's entire body jolted. No! No, please. He'll explode. Exactly, Marlene said. And that explosion will tell me everything I need. Men like him don't react calmly when confronted by power. They reveal themselves. Daniel stepped forward defensively. But what if he comes here? Marlene smirked. Let him. She tapped the thick folder on the coffee table. I didn't come unprepared. Clara hesitated. What do you mean? I already requested local patrol monitoring the neighborhood, Marlene said. If he shows up, he won't leave in the same car he came in. But first, she motioned toward their phones. Block him. Both of you. Now, Daniel immediately nodded and blocked the number. Clara's hand shook as she did the same. Marlene smiled, small, cold, confident. Good. That will drive him insane. And when unstable men lose access, they make mistakes. Clara whispered, You're sure we're safe here? Marlene turned her head slightly toward me. With her? She said. Yeah, I felt warmth rise in my chest, not pride, not ego, acknowledgement. Clara wiped her tears. So we stay here tonight. Yes, Marlene said. I need you both in a controlled environment. And Margaret's house is safer than your own. Daniel nodded. We'll do whatever you say. Marlene gathered her things. I'll be back in the morning. Don't open the door for anyone except me or uniformed officers. She walked to the door, paused, and turned toward us. Men like him don't attack when they're being watched. They attack when they think you're alone. Tonight, he'll realize you're not. Clara's voice was barely audible. What if he disappears instead? Marlene smirked. Then he's already lost. And with that, she left. The door clicked shut. Daniel locked it. Clara exhaled. I turned off the front lights. The house fell into quiet. But not fear. Not tonight. Tonight, something else had entered their lives. Something stronger than terror. Louder than manipulation. More powerful than any threat. A plan. A protector. And the beginning of the end. The night settled over my house with a strange stillness. Quiet, heavy, watchful. Daniel and Clara stayed in the guest room, but none of us truly slept. Not with the weight of everything that had come unraveled. Not with the knowledge that a man capable of psychological warfare was out there, circling their lives like a wolf waiting for the moment someone slipped. But beneath the anxiety, there was something else too, something we hadn't felt in days. A sense of protection, a sense of alliance. A sense that, for the first time, Clara wasn't alone in her fear. Sometime near dawn, after hours of tossing, turning, and listening to every creak in the house, I stepped into the living room and looked out the window. A police car idled quietly across the street, its silhouette barely visible in the soft morning gray. They were watching. They were waiting. And so was he. But today, the advantage was ours. A soft sound made me turn. Clara stood in the doorway, wrapped in one of my blankets, her face pale from exhaustion. "I didn't wake you, did I?" she whispered. I shook my head. Couldn't sleep. She gave a small, fragile smile. "My mind won't stop. Every time I close my eyes, I hear his voice again. Every time I breathe, I feel like he's waiting behind a door." I stepped closer. That fear doesn't disappear overnight, but fear doesn't win when you stop running. Clara's eyes filled with tears, grateful ones, not frantic ones. "I never meant to hurt you," she whispered. "Everything I did, it came from a place I'm not proud of." "I know," I said gently. "And you said the most important thing last night." "What's that?" "That you want to get better." She exhaled shakily, shoulders dropping, as if letting go of a weight she'd held for years. Before we could say more, a firm knock echoed through the house, controlled, intentional, familiar. Clara stiffened. "Is that?" "It's her," I said. "Detective Hale?" Daniel appeared seconds later, already dressed, alert despite lack of sleep. Together, we opened the door. Detective Hale stepped inside with a confidence that filled the whole room. "Good," she said, scanning our faces. "You're all awake. We have developments." Clara swallowed hard. "What kind?" "Him," Marlene replied simply. Daniel's jaw tightened. "Did he show up?" "No," Marlene said. "But he made a mistake." She pulled a folded page from her jacket and handed it to Daniel. He stared at the print, then looked up in disbelief. "Is this?" "Yes," Marlene said. "His birth name, his last known state of residence, and most importantly, his probation violation." Clara gasped, covering her mouth. "Probation?" "For aggravated harassment," Marlene said. "And coercive control. He was supposed to stay out of the state. He didn't." Daniel looked at me, shock widening his eyes. "He's wanted." "Not yet," Marlene said. "But now we can make that happen." Clara's hands shook. "How? How did you find him?" Marlene smirked. "Burner apps don't matter when the sender slips once. He used a hotspot registered under an alias he's used before. That gave me a location. A partial one, but enough." "Where is he?" Daniel asked. "A motel," she said. 10 minutes from your house." Clara stumbled backward, breath shattering. "He's been that close?" "For days," Marlene said. "But proximity isn't the problem. Opportunity is, and thanks to last night, he lost his opportunity." She placed a firm hand on Clara's shoulder. "He can't reach you now. Not mentally, not emotionally, not physically." Clara whispered, "So, what happens next?" Marlene straightened. "Next, I file the emergency protective order with the evidence you and Daniel gave me, and with his probation violation. This will go through fast. Once it's active, if he comes within 500 feet of either of you, he's done." Daniel exhaled slowly. "And after that?" "After that," Marlene said, "we bring him in." Clara's knees buckled, and she sank onto the couch, overwhelmed. I sat beside her. "Breathe. This is the beginning of your safety, not the end of your fear." She nodded, tears slipping silently down her cheeks. Marlene turned to Daniel. "And as for your marriage, what happens now is between the two of you. But I'll say this, your wife did something rare." "Rare," Daniel echoed. "She stopped lying?" Marlene said. Abusers don't prompt truth. Fear does. But courage finishes what fear begins. Clara chose courage last night. Clara broke down then, not in panic, not in guilt, but in release. Daniel knelt in front of her, taking her hands gently. We'll take this one day at a time, together. But no more silence. No more silence, she repeated through tears. Marlene headed toward the door. I'll contact you after paperwork is filed. Stay inside today. Police will monitor shifts. He won't get close. She paused, glanced at me, then softened, just slightly. And Margaret, yes, you raised a resilient one. My chest warmed. After she left, the house fell quiet, not heavy this time, but peaceful. Like a storm had finally passed, even though puddles remained. Clara leaned her head on Daniel's shoulder. Daniel leaned his head on mine, and together we breathed. Not fear, not grief, but something we hadn't tasted since the beginning of this nightmare, hope, because now the truth was out. The danger was exposed, and the man who once controlled Clara's entire world, he had finally lost his power over hers.